Welcome to Please Leave Podcast, home to stories that haunt. Every week, we dare to delve into the liminal space where the supernatural collides with the horrors of humanity. And in each episode, we unleash a new tale of terror. Our storytellers lift the thin veil that separates you from the unrelenting unknown, revealing terrifying truths of the paranormal that exist just beyond the realm of perception. If you're brave enough to join us as we confront the sinister, please stay. Subscribe to our Patreon and our main feed. But be warned, once you open your mind to these dispatches from the dark, they will refuse to leave.
Was fucking great.
Hello and welcome to This May Hurt a Bit. My name is James Strayer and this is
John C. Myers.
And we are a horror franchise podcast discussing each film in popular and not so popular horror franchises. And today we are talking about Saw from 2004. But most importantly, we have a special guest this week, Becky Darke. And she is a London-based podcaster and writer with her sites on film, horror, and 90s pop culture. She co-hosts the podcast Don't Point That Horror at Me and Return to Erie, Indiana, and is a regular contributor on The Evolution of Horror and The Final Girls. Say hello, Becky.
Hello.
Hi, Becky. I've been listening to you on Mike Munster's Evolution of Horror show for the past couple of years, so I'm very excited to meet you and have you on here to discuss our franchises as we move forward.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for having me. And yeah, you can't get away from me if you're an Evolution of Horror listener, so apologies for that.
Yeah, I didn't know that you hosted an Erie, Indiana podcast too, and I don't know if you hear this a lot, but I absolutely watched that when it was on television in its first run, and I've always been curious to revisit it, but I never have. So is that still in existence, the podcast?
So it was a limited show because Erie, Indiana, you'll probably know, only had 19 episodes.
Exactly.
So my friend Josh Tonks and I did a rewatch podcast, which was super fun. And we were very lucky to get sort of in with some of the cast and crew. So we interviewed Justin Schenkero, who plays Simon on the show. We interviewed Carl Schaefer a couple of times. He came on the show to do a couple of episodes with us, and he's kind of the executive producer and writer.
Wow, nice.
And we even had Mr. Joe Dante on the show as well, which was such, I know, like a ridiculous pinch me moment. And this is going back, like we started recording the podcast just before COVID.
Right.
So we did like a couple of in-person and then the lockdown happened. And so we started doing it remotely, which was great actually, because it kind of opened us up to recording with people in the States and things like that, which before that, we weren't really doing. And we had the absolute pleasure of having Joe Dante on. And it was one of those like, well, I've peaked. That's it. I'll just stop podcasting now. Why would I bother continuing? But I have continued in earnest. But it's a lot of fun. So, and Erie, Indiana is well worth a rewatch. Oh, it's really, really good.
Well, I will say that this will be a sharp drop off from Joe Dante. But Erie, Indiana, I mainly remember the visual of the people in Tupperware. I remember that episode. And that was right around the time of like American Gothic was on television. And there were those like strange gothy TV shows that were on. So yeah, got some of those I really want to take a look at again.
What a time to be alive. Yeah, the Tupperware episode, so Foreverware, it's the first episode actually, and it's one of the ones that...
There we go.
I know, and I don't know if, because obviously it was on kind of terrestrial TV here in the UK in like 92, 93, so I was kind of 10, 11, like perfect age range for it. And anybody of like a similar age of me who remembers watching the show back then, the first thing they always say is, oh my God, the one with the Tupperware.
Exactly. There we go. Yeah, I remember looking forward to watching that with my family after seeing the television commercials for it. So yeah. That's cool. I'm glad that you're keeping that show alive as much as possible.
We've still got our fingers crossed for like a reboot or something, and then hopefully we'll be asked to do something terribly official, which would be fun.
Yeah.
Well, now you're in with Joe Dante, so you're working the big levers behind the scenes.
John, honestly, we're like that. Cross fingers, best buds.
Right. Well, cool. Today we are talking about Saw, and Becky, since you're our guest, I'd love to hear kind of your personal history with Saw, if you have one. The first time you saw it, why this might be one that you were excited to come on and talk to us about. Even though I know I just sent you a list and just said, "Hey, we're talking about Saw. Want to come on?" So it may be as simple as that. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I did have a limited choice because I've actually only seen 3 of the Saw films. So I'm going to be listening to your kind of franchise rewatch with great interest. And probably this might be my opportunity to actually finish off and watch all of the films. And it's not for any reason, other than to be honest, if you've ever listened to me on The Evolution of Horror, you'll have heard my phrase one and done, because I used to be a one and done with horror films and films in general, to be honest. I've just never been a massive sequel fan. And definitely with horror, back in the day when I was reading, far more like film reviews in magazines and stuff than I do now, and taking a lot more notice of what critics said. Now I take very little notice of what critics say. But back in my earnest teens, when I was, I thought it was all very important what they were saying in Total Film and Empire magazine and things. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And, sequels always got a bum rap, and especially horror sequels. It was always like, 1 star, 2 stars, don't bother. And I took far too much notice of that. And so I've spent the last few years since I kind of found my horror people and started speaking to people whose opinion it is worth listening to on these matters. I've managed to fill a lot of my kind of sequel gaps, but less so with the Saw franchise. So with the first film, I mean, I saw it relatively around when it came out. I would have got it. I didn't see it at the cinema. I would have got it, when it came out kind of on home release. And 2004, it was probably a DVD that I got from, the local rental store. I'm a sucker for a twist in a film. I love the others. I love The Sixth Sense. I love, all the Shyamalan ones. I'm a big fan for anything that kind of pulls the rug out from under me at the end. I never guess a twist. I'm always very sort of credulous all the way watching a movie. Right. So I remember vividly getting to the end of Saw and my little mind being completely blown and thinking like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing ever. So I've got a relatively limited history with the franchise, but definitely this first one is a fave.
Nice. What about you, John? You've seen this one before?
Kind of similar. I missed it in the theaters. I had just moved to Portland at the time and didn't know a lot of people, and the person I had moved out here with wasn't into horror movies, so didn't really see it until it came to DVD. And I'm the same way in that if I can guess a twist in a movie, I'm mad because I'm Mr. Suspension of Disbelief if I'm having a good time. It's great. So I remember not being thrilled with it, looking forward to it, seeing it, not being that thrilled, but then getting to the ending and being like, okay, well, this was cool enough of a thing that I'm curious to see if they do any more.
Yeah, I remember that its reputation online at the time was a big thing, and I'm not proud of the fact, but I remember reading a bunch of coverage of it on the old and now kind of considered disgusting Ain't It Cool News website from back in the early aughts. And I remember they were covering it pretty extensively, and it was supposed to be like the nastiest horror of its day. And I just remember it was widely known that one of the members of Nine Inch Nails was doing the soundtrack for it. And that was right around the time I started going through this really ill-advised anti-Nine Inch Nails period of music listening for some stupid. I was like, they're not real industrial.
Yeah.
Did your ears fall off during that time?
I think so. I just went through this thing of just being like, well, they just make pop music out of Skinny Puppy songs. And I'm like, well, that's cool, actually. So I had opinions then. But no, I was like kind of curious what he was going to do with it. And I don't even remember if I saw this in the theater, but I remember I've only watched it a couple of times in the last 20 years or so. And I'll be honest, I had completely forgotten about the twist.
That's the best way, though, James.
Yes.
That's the best way for a
I got
rewatch.
to watch it through, and I was so excited when that happened this time. So, yeah. The rest of it, we can talk about. But I did. Overall, I really enjoyed watching it this time, to be perfectly honest. And I think I enjoyed it more now than I might have enjoyed when it first came out. Because, I don't know, I'm a little bit more looser on what I love, and I try to look for something in everything that I love. So the
soundtrack didn't annoy you as much.
Not at all. Not at all. I was just like, he's ripping off Frontline Assembly. How could he? It's also fun to think about just as far as like an indie movie that was so incredibly successful at the time. These two, James Wan and Lee Whannell, were like fresh out of film school. And, I'm even more appreciative of that kind of success now than I would have been then, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think I was like super aware of what a cool thing it was that these two kids were doing.
Yeah.
I just thought, oh, this is fun. I'm along for the ride. And then like you look back at it now and you realize, I think, the ground that they were breaking and how remarkable that was for how early they were in their careers.
Yeah. I mean, considering that they had no budget, and hearing about it after the fact, I'm a lot more like, look at what you guys did, versus just like thinking just Hollywood pressed a button and a movie came out. That it is pretty fascinating, and you learn just like the tight turnaround they had to do and all that stuff. Makes me a bit more forgiving of some of the stuff as well. Yeah,
this time, because one thing I do tend to forget is how much it jumps around. Like you don't spend the entire film in the bathroom with those guys. You've got flashbacks. You're kind of moving to the police procedural. You're going to Dr. Gordon's family. And I had kind of forgotten that you're not just locked in this bathroom with these two guys for the whole runtime. And what I like about it is that Juan and Whannell like really kind of threw a lot of stuff at the wall to see what would stick. Like there's a lot going on in this film. And actually most of it sticks. It's pretty confident filmmaking, and mostly it is really successful, which I massively respect.
Yeah, that's a good call. Confident, especially with, I didn't realize at first, but Lee Whannell, the co-writer, is the character of Adam. And they were shopping it around and just saying like, nobody gets this script unless James directs and Lee stars. And like, that's a lot of confidence too, especially for trying to sell your first film.
Yeah.
Not saying I would have that kind of confidence. I'd be like, sure, whatever, just get it made, please. So most people are familiar with the general setup. It's just, two guys wake up in a bathroom, I suppose, an extremely dingy bathroom. Their ankles are chained to a pipe in the wall. They don't know how they got there. They need to start piecing together clues. And there's a dead body in the middle of the room with a revolver in its hand. I mean, that's a fantastic setup just right there. And from there, they just basically have to put together the clues. There's keys. I think there's an envelope that has like a key for each one of them. Is that right?
In Adams, it's an envelope with a key and a small tape that says "Play Me." And Cary Elwes has a tape as well. But did he have? I don't remember what else was in his envelope. He's got a key, and then later he gets like a little box out of the wall, and he gets like a bullet and the cigarettes.
Right.
It's
essentially Escape Room, the movie, before escape rooms were a thing, and before Escape Room, the movie was a thing.
Right. I forgot there was an escape room movie.
It's not very good. Well, I didn't like it. I didn't like it.
We can do that as a bonus episode after we're through 9 Saw films and compare them. Yeah, they try to do all the keys and the various locks, and they're getting nowhere through most of the film. The first flashback, it does happen like fairly quickly, but I was not entirely sure where the flashback was taking place within the context of their timeline, because there's definitely two timelines. There's the bathtub and then like the night before, but then previous, there's one that goes further back, correct?
Yeah. This is 85% flashbacks, I feel like, this movie. And it gets a little convoluted in that way. If you try to start to think about how, like, some of the big, they do a bunch of montages as well, when it's trying to remind you of like, hey, this is Danny Glover's figuring this out, so we got to show all these old clips. Some of that really just comes from the fact that they didn't get everything they wanted to shoot. Like, they put scenes together and went like, oh my God, we don't have enough footage here.
That makes sense.
Yeah. But like story-wise, it like doesn't necessarily hold together, but it's just going along with the momentum and is hoping that that'll just carry you through, and don't think about it too much. And you don't.
Yeah, exactly. For the most part, I think that, that works. I'm quite happy to be along for the ride.
So on the first tape that they play, there's a scary voice that says something to the effect of, you have to kill Adam, Lee Winnell's character, by 6:00. And if you don't kill Adam, your wife and child will die. And by the way, there's 2 hacksaws that are hidden in the bathtub.
No, he has to fish them out of the toilet.
Oh,
which is
right,
completely disgusting.
Right. They're in the bag, right?
Yeah.
So yes, in the very train spotting toilet there.
I love the fact that he immediately just like dives into the bowl and he's like, there's nothing there. And it's like, I mean, would you not at least just out of hope check the system first?
There's a couple of moments where it's like, it's not, you could argue it's bad script writing or cinema sense or whatever, but it's mainly that these guys are idiots. Because like there's the bowl thing, and then later when Carrie Elwes is trying to reach the phone, and it's like, you already know you can take your shirt off and use it to grab a thing. But in the moment, he's not thinking about that.
Sure.
But I would absolutely go to the tank first. It's on the tank, checking the tank. particularly after you've seen what's in there.
The heart is on the tank.
Yeah.
It's like, come on.
And that's when Dr. Gordon does say,
he doesn't want us to cut through our chains. He wants us to cut through our feet.
There's that amazing, like, really kind of choppy edit where they've both got the hacksaws and they're both desperately trying to get through the chains, and it's just going from one to the other, from one to the other, from one to the other.
Totally.
And you're seeing very quickly that that ain't getting through there.
Yeah, and that's a part where the choppy editing really works, I think, because it happens a lot.
I agree.
And I think sometimes the overly stylistic stuff hurts some of the suspense, but in the more intense moments like that, I think it works really well.
Totally, yeah.
This we get a kind of a major flashback to the first trap that we see, which is the vibe of the whole scene is extremely Seven, very gritty, dark. Everything's gross. You don't want to live in this city. A man he's just sort of like hung up there, like he's just been like chained up by the Cenobites or something for a while. And he's just standing there with like razor wire, dead, exsanguinated. And the detectives are saying, technically speaking, these guys are internet guys before internet guys were a thing. He's just like, well, actually, he didn't actually kill himself. So wait for that, detective, in your mentions. But then they discuss the kind of fun idea that doesn't hold a whole lot of water as you go forward. The killer is making his victims choose to die, not actively killing them.
Right.
Which, kind of fun, but I'm not sure if that really holds a lot.
Well, it doesn't. And again, like realistically, this is just sort of sloppy storytelling. But I also like the idea of a killer that's like, no, I'm telling these moral judgments, and then absolutely you're not. Because what are you going to do? Well, actually, him? Yeah. Like, what are you like? Well, technically, this doesn't really work. He's like, oh, that's a good point. Sorry. Like, no, he's going to murder you with razor wire. Because the whole thing with the razor wire guy is that, oh, I saw you were trying to kill yourself. Do you really want to kill yourself, or do you want to live? If you want to live, crawl through all the razor wire to get out. Otherwise, I'm going to lock you in here and die. There's as awful as that sounds, like you don't see anything. You just see fast cuts of the guy, like, and it's overcranked or undercranked, whichever, sped up. So it's the guy like throwing himself at different razor wires. But how is that going to work? How is like, here, I'll just chop you up through with razor wire, and then you'll appreciate not being dead. It's like, no, then you'll listen to more Linkin Park. Like, that's all. It's not going to do much for you.
Never a bad thing.
Right.
I remember vividly, like, when it first came out, and everybody's kind of like, oh my God, have you seen it yet? Or did you know that there's this bit in it? Ew, it's so gross and disgusting.
Yeah.
I remember people calling back to when they say like, well, it cut him so deep, his stomach acids come out, and everybody being like, ew.
Right.
But that's all in your mind. They don't show it. And I think that actually is really, really effective. You know, for being the sort of grandfather of torture porn, as the genre was eventually called. It's not that gory. It's really, a lot of it is just left up to your mind.
It's essentially like a police procedural with this escape room kind of device like bolted onto the side of it. I would say that it's much more like a film like Seven than it is like a film like Hostel, for example.
Yeah.
Like the DNA from Seven to Saw is much stronger than from Saw to Hostel.
Yeah.
Built much more on the back of the sort of the thriller thing. Maybe some giallo. There's definitely some Argento stuff kind of thrown in there, but like with the doll and the trench coat, which Juan will revisit later, the trench coat and gloves. Yeah, it's definitely way more of a procedural than a straight up horror movie.
And I'm pretty positive that the sequels 2 through 9 are going to stay just that classy.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely the couple that I've seen are like...
If we've learned anything on this show is that they stick to the formula. 100%. They don't make any unnecessary changes or just give up. No, they'll just stick with it. Yeah, finish up the Wishmaster series, and then yes,
right, totally. So we get a little bit of Dr. Gordon backstory where he's seeing a patient. He's got a couple of creepy looking students as well, and he gets a call from Danny Glover, Detective Tapp, and asks where he was last night from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. And evidently his pen was found at a crime scene. So now Dr. Gordon is suspect number 1 in the serial killer mystery.
Which they kind of need to crowbar in so that he can give Adam the exposition of, oh, I know about this killer who does this stuff. I reckon I might know who's done this to us. Oh, well, how do you know that? Oh, I was a suspect. So he needs to have that kind of in, because I assume at this point in the investigation, it hasn't been like splashed all over the press, right? The idea is that they're kind of keeping this stuff like within the department.
Hey, the guys in the bathroom won't be getting any sort of like newspapers dropped on their doorstep to be like, oh wait, I can see. So yeah, I think you're totally right. Like
behind a paywall,
right? Exposition machine by way of suspect number 1.
Yeah, it was very telling in watching some of the behind the scenes stuff that because of the lack of prep, in fact, apparently a lot of James Wan's time before making the movie was spent dealing with visa issues in I think up in Canada. And so he really only had like a week of prep time. And as a result, there's, really tight shooting schedule and not a lot of time with the actors, a lot of time for rehearsals. And I think that really shows in the performances of Cary Elwes and Danny Glover, because Danny Glover's pretty ridiculous in this movie. makes his Predator 2 performance seem very restrained and calm. And I was worried when Cary...
Yeah, he's big.
He's very big. And I was worried when Cary Elwes started talking, because he's sort of whispering.
There's no point in yelling. I already tried that.
Turn on the lights!
Would if I could.
That he was going to do the Hugh Laurie, Benedict Cumberbatch, this is my American accent. And I'm sure you get that a lot watching movies where people, doing awful British accents, but it's occasionally they're English actors or Scottish actors, in the case of Ewan McGregor, who just, to me, I can't hear it. It just kills me. But then it sort of evens out.
Yeah, trust me. I get it in that direction probably more than I, especially if like living in the UK, you get, they often sort of come up on TV and stuff like Cumberbatch and, Ewan McGregor was in a lot of sort of little indie films and stuff as a Scot before he started, doing all his big Hollywood roles. And so often you're watching it and you're just like, oh, Ewan.
Yeah. But it works the other way too, where it's like, Gwyneth Paltrow, what are you doing? What's happening here?
Yeah. Moving on to the famous bear trap scene, I think is next. The reverse bear trap, which I think, if you think of the Saw franchise, or if I think of the Saw franchise, I think of this moment. And
Definitely.
I'm still deciding what I think about the whole concept of all these traps and stuff like that. But there's no question that this one's amazing. And it's so amazing that they, this is what they made the short film about to get funding for the feature, is just the concept of a reverse bear trap to me is just terrifying and so simple.
Yeah. And the original one, it was Leigh Whannell in that role as what eventually would be Amanda, Shawnee Smith. And they had a bigger contraption to do it, but it's the same little story. And when in the behind the scenes thing, they're talking about how they couldn't use the Australian one because it was too big and bulky and didn't actually open. And so the special effects guy's like, so we made one that would actually do that. It would actually tear your face off. And I'm like, God bless the USA. What if we made that actually work? A thing that no one actually needs, but we should probably make sure it's effective.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So
it looks, because she's tiny and it looks heavy. And like she talks about waking up, because this is one of the things that really terrifies me about the Saw films, especially this one, is this idea of you waking up to this thing.
Right.
Like it's not like you are abducted and they put it on you while you're awake. This idea of you waking up to she says something like, I woke up to the taste of like blood and metal or something. Then like, imagine coming to the realization that you've got this contraption on that you can't see,
right?
Because obviously it's just like all around her face. We can see it and it looks absolutely terrifying. Shawnee Smith is, she's a petite actress and it looks heavy and like it would absolutely just tear her to shreds. It's a really amazing scene.
It makes me wonder if like the effects guys said, this will actually tear your face open in front of her. Like, don't tell that to Shawnee. Just
get the union on the phone quick.
Right. Totally.
But we talked before, like in the first Friday the 13th, about the scary concept of dying for a cause, for a project that you have no idea about and really has nothing to do with you. And I think that works very well in this movie. And this gets mentioned a lot, that it is sort of plays into the sort of the American psyche after 9/11, and that horror films got kind of mean and dark after that. I mean, globally, like the French, what do you call that? The
Extremity.
New French Extremity.
Yeah, the New French. Thank you. The New French Extremity. That was already kind of in motion. Japan was doing its thing.
Wasn't it just?
Yeah, I watched, because I was like watching other ones. I watched Evil Dead Trap, and it opens with like an eye being cut open. I'm like, yeah, that's way different than so. Right. But this was like the first, big American budget, or not big budget, but big American film, wide release, to do that. And I think that counts a lot. You just wake up and all of a sudden the Twin Towers are down, and what you thought was just your secure life was actually, oh my God, I could die at any time. And I think that plays into some
right. That's such a good point.
That plays into that anxiety really well, I think.
Yeah, that like the disorientation of it.
And I think it's like looking back at it now, it's easier to see that we're in the moment. I was like, oh, this is cool.
Yeah.
Good enough for me.
This is the time that we first see the cute little puppet, right?
Mm-hmm. Love that little guy.
Oh, we're going with cute, are we, James? Cool. Okay.
It's the tricycle that makes him cute.
Very Kermit the Frog
And he
riding a bike.
Tricycles are never cute. I'm sorry. Have you seen The Shining and The Omen?
Oh, right.
We're not going with cute.
Right. I loved so much the first wide shot reveal of him just like wheeling into frame in the like dark little thing. I started laughing, but in the best possible way. I thought it was fantastic.
It's really hard not to laugh when he just like wheels in out of the shadows. I love it.
It'd be cool if he like Tokyo drifted in and then like lowered some sunglasses with, you win.
Yeah. I'm ready. But the idea of the puppet is such a good addition, considering, we've got a red herring in the killer through a part way through the film. And then, definitely the twist. It is fun to give a face to this character that we can kind of glom onto. And of course, you want a cool mask and everything for the cover of the DVD. So
right. Well, and they did.
There is that.
In the short film, I mentioned this on Twitter, in the short film, he's wearing a little hat that they got rid of, which I was bummed. There's this little like bowler that I think now would not have aged well, but it looks like, he'd want you to show you some YouTube videos of Ben Shapiro or something. But
right.
it gave him an air of even classier than he normally is.
Yeah, he's got like his little bow tie. He's a dapper gent, as we would say in the UK.
Right.
Exactly. Nobody says that in the
UK. Nobody says dapper gent.
Not nowadays.
Not now. So the little guy just wants to play a game. And, on the video, we see the reverse bear trap. I wrote in my notes here, okay, this is getting pretty fun. Although it does start the circular camera stuff, which I can handle for a brief little bit. And then maybe it's just because I'm old now and I just start to get a little dizzy and disoriented. But I know, as Grandpa Simpson says, that was the style at the time of editing and photography of these types of films. So that doesn't do a whole lot for me, but I think that's just more of a taste.
Yeah, I mean, that's
that style.
That's what kind of jettisoned me from it the first time I saw it, was that I had seen, because the trailer was built around the idea of this person waking up with the mask on, and like, the key is in this guy's stomach. She goes to cut him open and he's awake. So I was like, oh my God, I want to see how that plays out. And when it does play out, when she hears that information, the camera just spins around her and she freaks out in fast motion. It's like, well, all the suspense that you had now is just kind of like dissipated in this high energy nonsense, rather than just like letting that moment play out and letting me like watch her make that decision. And so I think it was sort of a missed opportunity there, at least. But like stylistically, it's more of my cup of tea than what they ended up going with, was the sort of let it play out. But like you said, it was the style at the time. And in fact, in the they tried to keep that going on the DVD extras, and that Carrie Elwes is telling some just like anodyne story about something that happened, and the camera's all just like shaking around like it's the most intense thing ever. And it was like, we had muffins today. Yeah, it was dumb.
She does see a body next to her with like a Riddler-looking question mark on his stomach, and this is now the big thing where like she has to carve the guy open to get the key out to unlock the contraption that will momentarily tear her jaw in half. And yeah, you're right. This was what a lot of the marketing was based on. Would you carve a key out of somebody's stomach, who you find out is alive, correct? And will you take that life to save your own?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, absolutely. Without hesitation. Yeah.
Right.
Sorry, was that rhetorical? Or was I supposed to answer it?
Well, we were going to go around the room and talk about the ethical quandaries, and you jumped right to it.
I'm going to go ahead and just end this call right now, if that's okay.
It's okay. There's an ocean between us, John. Don't worry.
Right.
But no, what life lesson was he teaching the guy on the ground? Because he just drugged this guy to murder him. He's like, if you don't get murdered, you'll win something. I don't know. That kind of was left.
Yeah.
It was neat, but it just, who is that guy? Mm-hmm. I don't know if because I know this, all eventually kind of wraps around. It's like that. So maybe they'll retcon that and tell us why. But I couldn't help but think about, like, what'd this guy do? Not that it matters to some people.
Right.
But I want to know.
So she makes it out. She gets the trap off, and then we're cutting back to Dr. Gordon and Adam. I heard his name is Lawrence, so I just kept writing his name down as Lawrence, and that just doesn't sound as good as Dr. Gordon, I suppose. And they realize there's a two-way mirror, and we finally get our first shot of the Giallo-style black gloves of we can just call him Zepp now, but like at the time, again, because I had forgotten all the twisties in this, and I was just like, so is that the Jigsaw? Is the puppet called Jigsaw? I couldn't remember all this stuff.
Yeah, I had completely forgotten that Michael Emerson was in this movie. Michael Emerson, probably most famous for his role as Ben Linus on Lost, or he was in that Person of Interest show with Jim Caviezel. But I got so excited because I haven't seen that guy in forever, and I had completely forgotten he was in this.
Okay, so I've got a question. Have you seen The Bone Collector with Denzel Washington and Angelina Jolie?
I have not.
I have not.
Okay. Firstly, you should, because it's excellent. And it's extremely similar to this in a lot of ways. Again, that like really clear DNA coming down from Seven. Mm-hmm. I just need to make sure whether it's the same guy or not. So talk amongst yourselves. I'll do some Googling.
Okay. Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure that that's the same guy and that he plays like essentially the same role. He's like an orderly who turns out to be the murderer.
Oh, that's hilarious.
I'm just going to check.
Yeah. I mean, that wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. Just because he is a creep.
Yeah, he's got a look.
And he's got that like little sort of like, no offense to him, because he's a very successful actor and everything, but he's got like little sort of like ratty like face.
Face.
He looks like kind of. He could play. He could easily play like Renfield.
Yes. Oh, that'd be a good one. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I like. But as soon as he showed up, knowing him now, I'm like, oh yeah, that's going to be our bad guy. And they kind of like set that up early because it's a flashback of Carrie Elwes talking about he's at his when the cops come to talk to him at his office, he's giving a lecture to some students about this particular patient, and he's like, the patient, blah blah blah, and then Michael Emerson shows up like,
his name is John. Dr. Gordon. He's a very interesting person.
And it's like, yeah, thanks.
And
Thanks,
he's
man.
very interesting, actually.
Right.
Well, actually.
Yes.
So I've looked it up. His name is Leland Orser. It's not the same guy, but the reason I got it confused is because he plays the guy in Seven who does the lust killing with the strap on.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, that guy's been in a ton
And
of
again,
stuff.
pinched
face.
Yep.
Right. We've got a flashback to the evening before with Carrie Elway's hanging out with his daughter and wife, and you can tell that there's the family drama going on, and the daughter says, "Don't leave us, Daddy." And I'm not sure why, like what's going on with the family necessarily to have that kind of classic line, but whatever. So of course, the moment that a kid says that, then Dad's going somewhere immediately after. So
if he's not going out for cigarettes, he's getting kidnapped and chained up in a bathroom.
Right. Or not going out for an affair, then he's getting kidnapped and chained up in a bathroom. Yep.
Jigsaw, I told you not to call me.
Not at home.
Not at home.
But I want to play a game.
Adam starts going through Lawrence's wallet when Dr. Gordon offers to show a photo of the family, and Adam finds a Polaroid of the wife and kid tied up, and he tucks it behind him so that Dr. Gordon doesn't see this. And then we immediately cut to the kid's room from the night before. This is where, he starts doing that thing. The killer is in there, starts holding a stethoscope to the people's hearts to hear their heart rate increase while holding a gun to their head. Man, that's sadistic and kind of original. But I definitely, I don't know about y'all. I don't have kids, but the older I get, the more the whole child endangerment kind of thing makes me ew. I get a little bit more bothered by it now, the older I get. But that little girl, she could sell it.
Oh, yeah.
I'll tell you that.
She's good. And I could do with less of the family drama nonsense, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
But you do need there to be a real threat to Gordon's family, so that he, firstly, you need to wonder whether he will kill Adam or not to free them. And secondly, you need to believe why he's going to do the extreme thing that he's going to do that the film's named after.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
But I'm with you.
No, totally agreed.
I found, and I think this is probably, is virtue of getting older. I don't know. But that scene with the terrorizing of the wife child was a lot scarier than the more physical stuff. That just kind of emotional abuse. I don't know if it's something that just, because I've experienced that in my life, not, having a gun to my head, but just you're I felt bad before I recognized that versus I haven't been set on fire while walking on glass. But not yet anyway. But
yeah, right.
But I also love, speaking of threats, I love the threat that Danny Glover gives the doctor as he drops him off after questioning, because he doesn't buy. Danny Glover is still convinced that the doctor is still the Jigsaw killer. And when he drops him off, he says,
we arrested a dentist last week. He liked to play with kids a bit too much. He lived 2 blocks from here.
Boy, I hope nothing bad happens. See ya.
I wonder why he was thrown off the force.
Yeah, weird.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, after a short montage of Tapp looking at all the newspaper clippings, we do flash back to when he's still on the force and he's watching the video frame by frame of the head trap video. And he figures out through some sleuthing that it's originating from a mannequin factory. He and Detective Singh mount up and head that way. A little on the nose, but always creepy. Mannequins and in a horror
always
movie.
Creepy.
And I thought it worked. It looked a little bit like a tad dated, but maybe it's just because it's literally 20 years old and we've seen this before. But I still enjoyed it though. It still looked pretty great. Yeah, once they get there, it's
wild. Everything was shot in that warehouse, pretty much.
Yeah,
because they had no money, and so they just turned everything in that warehouse to something else. And the bathroom set was more constructed, and seeing some of the camera work in that is even more impressive. Knowing that it's just a small space, that first shot of the camera pulling back from Adam, revealing the dead body, and then spinning upwards. They had no room to do any of that, and so it's impressive that they got a shot like that.
Definitely.
There's, other than photos, there's no exterior shots. Everything's inside, and because they couldn't afford to do crew moves or anything like that, and so that worked out really well. So the whole thing has this kind of grungy feel because of that.
Claustrophobic. Once they get there, they do a lot of poking around and see a few things under kind of red velvet cloths. The main thing they find is the diorama set of the bathroom, which I did kind of giggle at. You can see the little cardboard walls, but I liked it.
The at-home playset.
Yeah. Right. Barbie's dream house bathtub. For the discerning little girls and boys. So they do end up finding, a guy stuck under a red tarp who is confined to a chair, which we will soon see in just a couple of moments that he's in a trap when the Jigsaw character, what do we call him at this point? Because he's just in his robe.
Yeah, I think just Jigsaw. He's the Jigsaw.
He is
killer,
Jigsaw, right? Because I wasn't sure if that's what the Jigsaw doll, the doll was called, or they're both Jigsaw or whatever.
The doll's called Billy.
That's right, Billy. I forgot about that.
They're kind of they're
right.
like Billy is also Jigsaw. It's kind of like the Holy Trinity, God, Jesus, and the Holy Ghost, where Billy is Jigsaw, but is also separate from Jigsaw. So
I see. Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
It's more.
So Billy came to Earth.
Yeah, it's a bit ecumenical, but
amazing. I'd never thought of it so theologically before.
Right.
And the guy in the pig mask, that's Zeb, right? Is it Zeb in the pig?
I think so, isn't it? Because he's doing the kidnapping.
Yeah. As far as we know now, it's Zeb. I think that changes later, but for the context of the movie, it's never really fully explained which one it is, but I believe it's Zeb. Like story-wise, it would make more sense for it to be Zeb, since he's the one that kind of has to put this together at the bequest of Jigsaw.
Right. So Jigsaw shows up and immediately starts the trap, which was still pretty impressive. 2 drills going towards either temple of the guy in the chair.
Love a drill.
Yeah.
Yes.
Love a drill.
Yeah, right.
Big fan.
So Tep and Singh start flipping out, trying to do we catch the killer? Do we save the guy in the chair? And, why can't it be both? I don't know. But in all of this,
2 of us.
Yeah, exactly. This is a 2-person job. Why can't we split up?
Yeah.
But I do enjoy the fact that Singh gets so frustrated that he literally just shoots the drill bits off. That was fun. At the same time as Danny Glover getting his throat slashed by Jigsaw as he runs away with another Giallo blade coming out of the sleeve, which was fun.
Yeah.
I like the idea that that's what made Danny Glover have a hoarse voice. Like he already did. They're like, what if it was even worse?
Right.
Yes.
Give him a scar.
Yeah, gnarly scar
Yeah,
for later.
absolutely.
Detective Singh starts chasing Jigsaw out, and I really did like this death scene because they didn't show very much. Just he trips the tripwire, which makes not 1 but 4 shotguns blast down on top of him. So there is that kind of fun thing of they don't show the head, which is restraint, but they used 4 shotguns, which is not at all restraint.
So much blood.
Yeah. Yes.
I reckon a lot of their blood budget went on that one kill because there is so much, and I love it. My husband does a lot of video gaming. I don't do so much gaming. I'm the movie one. He's the video gamer.
Yeah.
But because I sometimes watch him play games, I'm aware of the shotgun trap as a thing.
Oh, yes.
And I was watching this, and I was like, 4 makes sense. Why not? If you're going to go for 1, if you're going to go for 1, let's do 4.
Right,
totally.
You really, really want to just cover your ass on that one.
Yeah. Get the whole doorway taken care of.
Exactly. They're lined up along the whole of the frame. It's amazing.
Tap finds Singh's body just as Jigsaw gets away, and then we're back to current day, and Tap's apartment is just a mess. His apartment is kind of like the evidence dungeon. It's just covered in newspapers and stuff like that. So get the sense he's been kicked off the force for sure they have a name for it, but luring your partner into a shotgun trap accidentally is that'll do it.
Loose cannon. Well, cannons, I guess. Loose cannons.
Yeah, he's a loose cannon.
Nice.
Hey, yes. We're back to Gordon and Adam in the bathroom, and they do this, this trick where X marks the spot and they find the X painted in glow-in-the-dark paint, and they crack open the wall behind it, and they get what Becky referred to earlier, like the little box. What did it have in it? Like 2 cigarettes?
2 cigarettes, and I think...
A cell phone.
Is that where he gets the bullet? And the cell phone, of course. The cell phone that only receives calls.
Exactly. Yeah. How convenient. And this is where we see Zepp a few times with his like black gloves watching the TV monitor. And I was just thinking to myself, like, do you think that he gets like kind of giddy and proud of the 2 guys for solving puzzles at this point?
Yeah.
He's just like, yes, you did it, guys, you know? Or is he like kind of flummoxed, like, oh, they got it, you know, they called my bluff. So
yeah,
I'd like to believe he's a little excited.
Yeah, I've been in escape rooms where we're too dumb to figure it out, and the person like will just chime in and be like, just do this. And so I think there's probably a lot of him just like, come on, just figure it out. Like the same way, like if you listen to a podcast and they mispronounce a name and you're sitting there like, no, that's not how you say it.
Right.
There's got to be a certain amount of that.
Or somebody's having to look things up on Google because they can't remember whether an actor's been in a film or not. Yeah. I mean, it's familiar. I don't know.
You've listened to the show before. That's good news.
Now we get kind of a backstory of Dr. Gordon's kidnapping, I think, and we see the pig mask and him getting abducted while he's on the phone. Adam finally shows Gordon the Polaroid of his tied up family. So this is where things kind of like shift into high gear now, because as you were saying, Gordon now has a reason to be even more sufficiently upset than his current situation.
I wish they would have leaned on that a little bit more. Like, I really like the interplay of these 2 guys chained up and they don't know who the other one is. And like, did you bring me into this? You know, can I trust you? What's your deal? And the sort of the fledgling relationship between them. I wish there was a little bit more of that, because that was among my more favorite parts of the movie, especially as they sort of
completely agree.
As they are in audience stand-in in a way also, where since they're chained and they can't like help the other one, they're stuck in this sort of more voyeuristic position like us, where you're just watching someone like fail to do this trap and you're like, nuts, can't do anything for you, buddy.
Inside the box is a little note. It says something to the effect of like, you know, you can poison this cigarette and toss it over, and you'll achieve your goal of killing Adam if you want to. But it shows him like, what does he dip it in? Is that oil?
It's his blood. It's
on the ground.
It
is blood.
It's his blood.
Because
so he says, if you've been pumped full of this much poison, the only thing to do is shoot yourself.
Right. Okay.
Like, is
right. Run to the paramedics. I don't know.
Does the bullet have the antidote in it? Because then yes, that would work.
Yes. So they try to pull this little trick on Zepp by turning off the lights.
This has me absolutely howling. It is so lame.
Yeah.
They are so shit.
Yeah.
It's hilarious.
Like, do you think Lee Whannell was acting that poorly on purpose to show that he was acting like he was acting, you know? Yeah. I would hope so, because
there's not some, there's some not great performances in this, but there's no way that the director saw that happen and went, yep. Perfect. Right. That's just what we needed.
It's perfect, like bad death acting, and I am 100% here for it. It is so lame.
Yeah.
Yes. So Adam inhales a cigarette, acts like he's dying from the cigarette, falls on the ground, and then is promptly electrocuted from. Is it the floor that's wired, or is it the?
I think it's the chains.
The chain.
Yeah.
I think it's the chain. Yeah.
Right. I do love that kind of failsafe that Jigsaw has, and it's like, you know, I will know whether you're dead or not by electrocuting you.
Yeah.
Gordon once again tries to cut through the chain and can't, and then we get the flashback of when Adam gets abducted. And he's in his dark room, and we see, he's been taking photos of Dr. Gordon.
Bum, bum, bum.
They do have a fun scene here where instead of turning the lights on in his dark room laboratory, he starts using the camera flash. That's always effective to me.
Yeah.
Love that.
Building suspense. When the pig mask guy jumps out of the closet in the flash, it did make me actually jump. So I appreciate that too.
Yeah, it's a good scare.
Cutting back to the bathroom, there is an incoming phone call of the wife saying,
"Don't believe Adam's lies. He knows you. He knew all about you before today."
And then, yes, this is where we find out that Tapp has been hiring Adam to follow Dr. Gordon around, hopefully getting evidence of him as the killer, but no, he's just a boring old adulterer instead of a killer. Yeah.
It's just bonking his assistant or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
I was confused at first because I was like, why would he need to hire him? He's a detective. But then it's you find out that Tapp has been, ever since their initial thing, Tapp has been seriously harassing Dr. Gordon. And so it makes sense that he'd be like, he's going to recognize me. He's going to be looking for me. So you go do it.
The clock strikes 6. We've had the countdown of 6 hours for Gordon to kill Adam. Mm-hmm. It turns out that Zepp has been watching the whole proceedings one room over from the family. I was a little bit confused here. Like, the family was taken somewhere, or Zepp has set up shop in the family's home.
I think it's the latter, but I'm not entirely sure how.
Yeah, I was a little confused about the geography, and I was just like, which is which here?
Unless that's his basement. His basement is a warehouse. I don't know. But yeah, it looks like he looks like they're in their bedroom, and the warehouse must be somewhat nearby because that gets over there pretty quick when he has to.
Exactly. Yeah. Then she gets the mother gets the drop on Zepp and takes the gun away, which was pretty impressive. I didn't see that coming.
I love this
exactly.
Bit.
Yeah. But then I'm just like, this is literally the like, this guy took you guys captive. Just pull the trigger. I think you're well within your right here.
Yeah.
Just like
remember what he was doing to your daughter.
Exactly.
Like, 8 or 9 scenes ago.
Just do it.
Well, also,
I mean, I can confidently say that I'm able to do that if I were in the scene.
Guys are murderers. But I do like that. I do like that. Like, before she starts attacking Zepp, like, she tries to give him some kiss offline, and it sounds like she's delivering that to Dr. Gordon. So it's, saying like game over, whatever it is she says. Before she attacks him, so Gordon's like, well,
she says like time's up.
Yeah, and then he hears a bunch of gunshots, and he's like, oh no. Whereas she's like trying to put one over on Zepp, and I like that we'll make fun of what a misunderstanding a lot on this podcast, but I think that one actually like really works.
Yes, that did work.
Yes, good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Tapp sees gunshots going off in the apartment, and Tapp shows up like. Basically, it seems like right across the street or so, and then they have a shootout between the two of them. After Allie manages to stab Zepp in the leg with scissors, which is fun. And now I love this car chase scene so much. It's so goofy looking, but man, it worked for me.
Dumb.
It's extremely dumb.
I loved it. Yeah, and this is they had 2 cars parked with a big black backdrop and some fog, and then they just shook the cars with a couple of PAs on either side, and then overcranked it.
Yeah,
done.
Yeah.
I thought it was fantastic.
It's very silly.
It's the most 2004 car chase.
The Fast and the Stationary.
Right. Here, Dr. Gordon can't reach the phone. That is ringing again. I think this is what you were saying earlier, where he doesn't use his shirt.
Yeah, and Lee Winnell is not helping him. He's just like, oh no, just staring at him gape-mouthed as he's just flailing.
Yeah, he's really starting to lose it in the most pathetic sort of way.
Their blood sugars must be like super low by now. Give them a break.
That's true.
I mean, after 5 hours, I'm worse. So, like, I need to eat regularly here.
I've taped a Snickers bar to the back of each pipe.
Right. And this does build up to what we were referring to earlier, what the entire movie is basically based around, where Cary Elwes saws his own foot off. And for a Saw movie, I was surprised that they didn't show more close-ups of this, but I'm willing to bet this is where the sequels really shine, with showing more of the gore. I like it without, personally, but I bet that's where the sequels go.
And it's like, for me, there's enough, because you see it like start to do the leg, and there's like, you see blood. It's not like Texas Chainsaw Massacre when you just completely imagine that there's any blood when he sort of puts her up on the hook or whatever. You see a bit, and it's like enough to let you know that saw is going in there, and then it really just concentrates on Adam's reaction, which is essentially what my reaction would be, which is complete kind of just freak out, disgust, what the fuck.
Yeah, it's not even happening to me, and I'm still losing my mind watching it if I was in there.
Well, by now, Adam's madly in love with Dr. Gordon by this point, because as we know, Saw is a beautiful love story between two heterosexual males. So, I'd be feeling pretty like empathetic.
Tragedy brings people together.
Yeah,
Right.
misconnections. Like we were trapped in a bathroom together. You saw it off your foot.
Right. Call me.
Yeah, I'm going to guess that's what the sequel is. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's when they move in together and they're like fighting over,
I sawed off my
where do
foot
my
for
wooden
you.
spoons go? Where do yours go? Yeah, exactly.
Have you seen my shoes? You mean shoe? No, like, come on.
Real mature.
Where'd you
Adam.
move
It's
it?
like a proper slapstick comedy.
Yes.
Gordon's just like falling over stuff all the time.
Zepp and Tap start wrestling over a gun, and Zepp manages to shoot Tap in the chest. So exit Danny Glover. He's gone. Sweet release.
Very inglorious death for this. Like not even in a trap or
Yeah.
anything. Just
Yeah.
bum luck for Danny Glover.
And by a henchman as well, not
Right.
even by Jigsaw himself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just got henched. Terrible.
He doesn't have a Sherlock and Moriarty type of moment of
No.
facing off against the big bad.
Yeah.
Lawrence loads up the gun that's in the middle of the room with the dead body with one bullet, aims it at Adam and just says, you have to die. And shoots Adam in the gut. And then Zepp arrives in the bathroom to find Adam dead, and Gordon's just flailing around with one foot and still pointing a gun at him and just says, like, it's the rules. And then Adam wakes up, takes down Zepp in a pretty violent and harrowing scene, bashing him with a toilet bowl or a toilet lid over and over. I just love that he didn't stop either. We're going to get 7, 8, 9, 10 slams with that thing just to make sure.
Just really let him have it.
Right.
Apparently he was hitting a garbage can full of blood. Is what Leigh Whannell has apparently said, but yeah, it's great.
Right.
You really feel those chunks of that thing landing.
Certainly. Adam finds a tape recorder, finds out that there's a recording and that Jigsaw set up Zepp to make him do the killings. At this point, so he says something about like there's poison running through you. Did I just miss why Zepp was recruited? Like what's his sin?
No. They never tell.
No, you didn't miss it. I don't think.
So there's no narrative reason why Zepp was chosen. It's just like, hey, poor schlub, I'm going to make you do this.
You interrupted the doctor. Interrupting is rude, and I'm going to make you appreciate life.
Right?
Yeah, I have no idea.
And then here's the big twist that I completely forgot was happening. The body in the middle stands up, and it is Jigsaw himself, who's been running around in a bathrobe for the rest of the movie earlier.
And the shot is so good. He's like, you've got Adam in the foreground, and he's like Jigsaw's all out of focus, and he's not even completely in frame at first. Like, oh my God, it's so perfect. I just remember losing my shit. I was like, no way.
Because he's also not like waking up and being all like mustache twirly about it. He is just like, whoa, I am just getting up. I got to pull this crap off my face. Did this all go down? Okay, well, hey, the key's over there, buddy.
So creepy.
Yeah, it's great. I guess Tobin Bell was laying there the whole time.
He doesn't cackle.
Yeah, no, it's all business for him. But like that wasn't a dummy, and he showed up and just laid down on that floor for day after day. And I mean, on one hand, it's like, that's an easy acting job. At the same time, you've got to lay on a floor for 8 hours. That's no good.
Yeah. I'm just like, oh, that was his way to get a day rate for, 6 days or so. He's like, I really want to be in there with him.
It's important to my character that I make money on this.
It's like, right. Nah, but good for him though. Yeah. No, you're right. He doesn't, cackle. Yeah. He doesn't say like, now I have won. He just walks out, says game over, and slams the door shut.
It gives me this is the best bit. It's like, it's the best bit of the whole film for me. Like, I love this film, but holy shit, just when he like pulls that door over.
And it's not even quite like a complete silhouette. You know, you can still kind of see a little bit of his expression too. So it's just perfectly lit, good on them.
Well, and that he reveals that the key's in the bathtub, and the key is like the first thing that happens in the movie, basically, where when Leigh Whannell wakes up in the bathtub, this thing falls out of his mouth and goes down the drain because he actually pulls up the drain. So that like they were screwed no matter what. But then you also kind of wonder like what happens to Cary Elwes, because he's, I doubt he's that quick on his elbows.
Foot?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does,
Apologies to anybody listening with,
So you mentioned Mike Munzer earlier, my good friend Mike, and we were talking about how I haven't seen all of the sequels, and apparently at some point you do find out. Ooh.
Yeah, that is one of the only ones I've seen, but I just like the idea of just Jigsaw just like gonna squeeze by you real quick, excuse me, and just going right by him and just walking.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, going down the same hallway,
like,
right?
Yeah, it's like when you say goodbye to each other outside of like a restaurant or whatever, and then you like big hugs and like I'll see you soon, call me, and then you end up both walking the same way to the subway.
Right.
Like it's so embarrassing, it's so cringe.
I love that. Well, I'll tell you what happened to Cary Elwes' character. He sued the producers for breach of contract because he was supposed to get 1% of the gross, which, on a low budget project is not terribly uncommon. But they ended up settling out of court for some undisclosed amount of money. But yeah, like Cary Elwes only got paid like $2,600 or something for this role.
Wow.
It was something really small. And, obviously, like you go like as low budget as you can just to get the thing made, and then you reward on the back end. Then he's just like, wait, I didn't even get my back end money. And then they settled it out of court, and he appears in one of the sequels later on. So I guess like not too hard of feelings.
Yeah,
were had over this.
I tell you what, he plays that like after he's sawn off his foot as well. Bless him.
Yeah,
he looks very unwell for starters. Just like absolutely ashen,
totally,
and sweat dripping off of him, the way his voice drops, his like performance in kind of the shaking and stuff. I fully bought that Cary Elwes had just like chopped off one of his feet.
Totally.
He is so good.
It's ridiculous.
Yes. Yeah. And that's it. That's the first Saw movie.
Yeah.
I mean, my goodness. Well, before we get into our final thoughts, let's honor those dead real quick. Paul Leahy, played by Mike Butters. Extenuation, cut up by razor wire. Mark Rodriguez, played by Paul Gutricht, covered in flammable oil and set aflame. Donnie Greco, played by Oren Kuelis, disemboweled for a key. Detective Stephen Singh, played by Ken Luang, head blown off by 4 shotguns. Detective David Tapp, played by Danny Glover, shot in the chest with a pistol. Zepp Hindle, played by Michael Emerson, head bludgeoned with toilet tank lid. So we had a body count of 6 in this movie. There are 9 films. What do you think the total amount will be for the Saw franchise? Knowing that the body counts usually go up.
Yeah.
Although that didn't happen during Wishmaster, of course. But
they go up.
Total number?
They go up, but like at the same time, since the deal is the traps and watching them happen, I'm going to keep it kind of, I'm going to go 65. I'm going to just do a round 65.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. I mean, you're right, because, the traps are so involved, and I'm sure they get even more and more involved as it goes on, which like there goes a good portion of your budget. So maybe, bigger budget doesn't automatically mean bodies. It means more elaborate traps.
Cooler traps.
Which I get that. So just to be fun, I'll go 72. We got to have some difference. Mm-hmm. And Becky, what do you think? If you had to guess moving forward?
I'm notoriously bad at this sort of thing. But James, I think you're probably sort of on the money. If we're talking 9 films, 6 in this, like if it stayed at that, we're looking at 54.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm gonna go kind of in the middle of you two. I'm gonna go 69 dudes.
Nice.
69.
Yep. Cool. All right. Well, we will. We'll definitely by Spiral Book of Saw. By the time we finish that one out, with with Chris Rock.
Oh my God! Actually, I've seen
that
Spiral Book of Saw, and I had forgotten. That will tell you everything you need to know about Spiral Book of Saw. I had forgotten I had seen it. Not only had I forgotten that I had seen it, I'd forgotten that film existed until you literally just said it.
Your eyes lit up right there with recognition. I'm so glad that I managed to see that instead of checking a note on something. Like, it was true shock that you had forgotten that you saw the Chris Rock Saw movie. Just that statement alone, the Chris Rock Saw movie, if you would have been told that 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that there's another one coming out, and if it comes out this year, I wonder if our watch schedule will align with coming into that one, because that would be fun, because that would be 10.
That would be
That's
fun.
right.
Well, and it would also mean if I'm going to end up watching along with you guys, it would mean that I would be, all ready for the new one. How exciting.
Exactly. Yes. We said this before on the show, but like, that's kind of the fun part, is just like both of us filling in all the gaps. And it's just like, I don't know if I've seen every single, now we will know that we've seen every single one of these long franchises.
Yeah.
And you'll have a whole new chance to forget that Spiral existed.
Yes, yeah.
You'll watch it a second time, and then 3 weeks later, I bet you'll forget all over again. Join us as we forget Spiral all over again.
Forward to that one.
Well, yeah, I liked this a lot more, I think, this time around than the first couple of times that I watched it. I remember being like kind of into it, but not super into it. But this time, for whatever reason, it worked a lot more for me, and I'm actually looking forward to slogging through 8 more of these.
Yeah, it's still not my favorite, but I did like it more this time. Some of it being I think both just like a looking back at it as it was, but also kind of what you were speaking to earlier, Becky, that like, well, this isn't an important piece of cinema, so I can't possibly demean myself to enjoy this. Where now some like the really dumb stuff, I'm like, hell yeah, this rules. Let's more of that. So yeah, I am looking forward to seeing some more of ridiculousness. And I have seen some of them before, but I really don't remember much of them. So I'm looking forward to revisiting that.
Did you have a different opinion this time, Becky, or much the same?
I think much the same. I enjoyed it again, though. Sometimes sort of on multiple rewatches, they do, especially films that have a twist. But the ones that stick with me, I mentioned earlier, like The Others. Like, I always know what's going to happen in The Others, and I love it every single time. And while I don't think this quite reaches the height of that masterpiece, I had a really, really great time with it. And I'm really happy that this sort of gave me the excuse to revisit it and also watch it. I mean, you'll know this, when you're watching films because you've got a recording coming up, you watch it with a slightly different eye.
Yeah.
And I actually really enjoyed kind of watching it a bit more analytically and, looking at it again, as this kind of important piece of cinema, this important kind of step in the genre, and watching it as the beginning of, one and one L's sort of careers as well. Like, it's a banger, and I will definitely be coming back to it. But I must say, if you do a bonus on The Bone Collector, which I kind of think you should, because it's essentially like halfway between a Saw and a Seven, then I insist that you get me back on to come and talk about it, because it's a banger. Absolute banger.
Yes.
All right. Yeah, we'll have to do that.
Yeah, you have Becky, we've got 8 more Saws to come back and watch. So you are more than welcome to come back as you watch along. And if you're like, oh man, number 5 was great, I need to talk about it, just message
I'll
me.
let you know.
Absolutely. Come back on. I think the thing that I'm most interested in like looking at throughout the rest of these sequels is, I know that it's got the retconning going on, and that always kind of cracks me up. I don't have much of an emotional attachment to it to be mad at that kind of thing. I just find that stuff not so much clever as goofy and just fun to watch, I think, and it never really bothers me. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, and I think that was something I kind of had to readjust my expectations for rewatching the first one, knowing a bit how it gets so convoluted and ridiculous, much like the traps themselves, that like that not being there right away was a little bit like, oh, I thought, okay, no, that comes later. And so I'm looking forward to that, to it just getting ridiculous of like, I plan out these things are going to happen way after my own death, and it's just wild stuff. So always a fan
and
of that.
it just being, and like we were saying earlier, just the fact that this is more police procedural than it is like, quote, torture porn. That this changed my mind on that a little bit, because I carried that same thought without a whole lot of evidence in my brain about it, because I didn't remember it as well.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to seeing how that switches over 8 sequels.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I'm sure it does. I'm sure the restraint is right out the window by part 3 is my guess. So, all right, Becky, well, it was great to have you on. I want to turn the floor over to you to plug any other shows that you've got coming up live or other podcasts that you're working on right now.
Oh, amazing. Thank you. Well, guys, this has just been the most fun. So thank you so much for asking me on. I'm always over at the Evolution of Horror. So my own podcast talking about like Eerie, obviously that was relatively short-lived, but Josh and I might be back at some point this year because Matinee, which is a Joe Dante film, has got an anniversary this year. So we might do a special episode on that. And Jill Nolan, my best friend, who I do the Don't Point That Horror at Me podcast with, where we look at the 90s spooky YA paperbacks, point horror books.
Oh,
We've
nice.
been on a bit of hiatus because they're these huge deep dives that we go on for hours and kind of look at it all within the context of the 90s pop culture that was around at the time. But they tend to be like these epic things that I then have to edit. And we've both had various life bits and pieces going on over the last couple of years. So they've kind of become more and more sporadic, but we will be back at some point. So watch this space. You can find us over at Point Horror Pod. And always over at Evolution of Horror, I'll be back on Mike's upcoming Home series. He's doing kind of home invasion and like horror of the home stuff. So I'll be back to talk about a couple of bangers with him. And we've got loads of live events all over the UK. So if you are in the UK, we're kind of continuing our tour outside of London as well. So we'll be in various cities around the UK. So
nice.
Awesome.
Yeah, the 30th anniversary of Matinee, I noticed I'm going to the Overlook Film Festival in New Orleans in about a month.
I'm so envious.
And they're having a 30th anniversary screening of Matinee, and Joe Dante is going to be there to introduce it and talk about it and stuff.
Awesome.
I only watched Matinee for the first time about 6 months ago.
Do you know what?
Even though it's something really?
Yeah.
I don't know why I'd always missed it, and it was always one of those, I know I'll like that if I finally sit down and watch it, and I just never did. And
it's so
loved
great, right?
I
absolutely loved it and was kicking myself that I hadn't seen it before. I think because I grew up with The Burbs and Gremlins and, was just absolutely obsessed with those films. And I think for some reason, Matinee just wasn't as available. And it recently came onto one of my streaming services. I was like, finally. And I was so thrilled to say that I absolutely loved it. So
totally. Yeah, I might have to go watch it that quickly in succession again if Joe Dante is going to be there introducing it and such.
That would be so fun.
John, any other shows you're on that you want to plug?
As always, John Alex Hate Stuff. Talk about other movies. I don't know what we will have done. I think we just did, by the time this comes out, we will have just done Everything Everywhere All at Once. See if I really liked it when I saw it in the theater. I haven't done the rewatch yet, but curious to see how that'll play out, what Alex thinks about it. But you can find us wherever podcasts are. That's John with an H and Alex with 2 X's.
And if you like short horror fiction, 30-minute short stories that are all original, check out Please Leave. You'll hear professionally read original horror stories right there for your ears. And hope you like it. We're a newer show, the brainchild of my business partner, Courtney Eck. She writes most of them, and we just produce them all up and polish them, and you get a brand new short horror story every week.
That sounds awesome. I will be definitely checking that out.
Thank you. It's so fun. We love doing it. Yeah. I want to do a big push on that. So, well, thanks again, Becky, for being here. It was an absolute blast. You're welcome back anytime.
Thanks again. I've loved it.
Absolutely be bugging you. Yeah. And everybody else, we will see you next week, or in 2 weeks, actually, for Saw 2.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Good night.
This has been a Two Penguins media production. It was produced by James Strayer and edited by John C. Myers. Logo by Ethan Kimberling and music by Michael Arthur Holloway, who you can find on Bandcamp. Follow us on Instagram at This May Hurt a Bit Pod and on Twitter at Hurt a Bit. Email us at thismayhurtabit@gmail.com. And if you are so inclined, rate and review us on your favorite podcast app, and we'll see you next time.